Hi, my name is Caitlin Pryor, and this is my classroom management final. So to start, on the first day of school, you obviously want to get to know your students and start those relationships off first. So I started with getting to know your students, and I actually did a research project on this, and it talked about using a photo roster instead of just an icebreaker game. So that's one of the things I want to do to better get to know the students, because the better you know your students, the easier it is to teach them and spend 8 hours a day with them, because nobody wants to go to a job that they hate. So making it more exciting by making friends with your so-called coworkers or your students will make it a lot easier. And plus, by showing an interest in them, you show that you care, and that can have a huge impact on how they behave and react to your teaching and your lessons. I also put letters on here because when I was in elementary school, which is what I was going for, is our teachers would have us write letters about anything that they wanted about anything we wanted them to know about us. So like our family situation, our hobbies. That way they knew and could easily build a relationship because they know more about us. For teacher-student relationships, as a teacher, I want to be willing to help as much as I can, as long as they're willing to ask questions. So I want to be approachable as well. If you're not approachable, then the students are going to keep to themselves, and they're not going to branch out and ask you for help when they really do need the help. As for parent-teacher relationships, immediately as you get a new class, establish the communication with parents so that they know that you're serious about that relationship and that you're willing to put in the effort to communicate for the students. So for the next slide, I talk about communications. Again, the student-teacher in class and before and after school. Those are the best times. We learn that in class, and as long as you're available, then students should take the opportunity to talk to you. As a teacher, I want to be available as often as possible so that they have every opportunity that they can to talk with me. As for parent-teacher communication, obviously email. That's the easiest way. Just send out like a class email to all the parents in your class so that they're in the loop on what's going on. Another way to keep parents in the loop of like the classroom objectives and the homeworks is with newsletters. Via the students, parents can still be informed on the responsibilities of the students with newsletters, and they're pretty simple to make. I really like the idea of newsletters because in my elementary school, several of my teachers used them, and it helped me talk with my parents and get my parents involved on my education, which is, again, also very important because that affects the students' learning. Running a classroom. So the schedule I want to be posted in my classroom every day so that students know what's going on and what to expect out of class that day. I want it to be time efficient. I don't want there to be time wasted because that's time that can be used to learn. For example, in our observations of the 6th grade class, there was a teacher who got his business done at the beginning of class. He was talking to students. Well, he had his class reading, personal reading, any book that they wanted. And while he did that, he would take attendance or talk to the students that needed counsel or whatever. Those who needed to like talk about grades or anything, they could go up to him in that time. That gave him time to get all the business done before class so that it wasn't wasted in class time. As for discipline, we learned this in class, but I also definitely agree with this. Discipline, not punishment. Well, as soon as you say punishment, it puts fear into the students, and I don't want fear in my classroom. I don't want to have to use a lot of discipline, but because I want it to be like a funner classroom. I don't want to have a lot of rules. I just want it to be a very simple environment. But the discipline that can be applied to that is preventative. I got this from my research. It's the discipline that stops. It's a strategy that stops discipline before it, or stops issues from happening before it even happens. So again, preventative. And if that doesn't work, then you go to the supportive, where you can actually just talk to the students and have them talk about the problems that are going on before immediately issuing a punishment to them. For lessons, I want it to be a discussion, not a lecture. I don't want it to just be me talking to the students, telling them what they need to know. I want it to be a discussion as to why this is important and how it can be applied to their lives and why it's necessary. That way it's not such a, I guess, dictatorship classroom. It's more of a community, like it should be. Rules, routines, and consequences. So for the rules, I want to establish those obviously at the beginning of the year, so the students know what what I expect of them and how they should behave. But I also want the students to get a say in it, because in my experience, when students have the opportunity to make rules for themselves and dictate their rules and actions, they tend to step up to meet those standards. That's my experience. Several of my classes have done that, and I've seen it happen in other classrooms. By giving them a say in the class rules, they're more likely to be willing to comply with those rules. As for consequences, again, consequences, not punishment. In another classroom that we observed, there was a teacher who had a behavior chart, like the one I have on my PowerPoint, and it was superhero themed. He likes superheroes, and it has like the clothespins next to them with their names on them. That way, you can measure where they are in their behavior, so that they understand when they need to settle down, or they even get rewarded for doing good things. On the consequences, was in our notes, but it needs to be directly related to the action. So if students aren't doing their homework, it doesn't make sense to give them extra homework to make up for that homework, because they're already behind. I haven't figured out what that consequence should be, but it doesn't make sense to give them more homework if they're not doing their homework in the first place. And rewards, it's important to let the students know when they're doing things right. So in my 4th grade, we had a teacher who, if you got all your work in, and every month she would kind of host like a luncheon, and she would order us all like Mimi's Cafe, I think, and we all got to eat in the classroom, and we would just talk and joke around, and it was actually a really fun time. So everyone would work hard just so that they could get in that party, and it promoted hard work and responsibility for your homework. Lastly, designing the classroom. I think the physical setup of the classroom is really important, and I've had a lot of different experiences with desk setup. I personally want, like I have in my picture, I want the desks to be in pairs, all facing forward. Because in my past classrooms, we've had desks like in a circle, or having desks facing the opposite of the focal point. So like the whiteboard. It'd be like they'd have like the back of their heads to the whiteboard. And I think that doesn't help students pay attention. That promotes them to talk to the people that are in front of them, instead of forcing them to turn around and look at the board. So I want all this, which kind of prevents some kind of group work, but that's why I have them in pairs. They still have somewhat of a group so that they can talk and discuss and get help if they need it, but it has them all facing forward, listening to me as I'm teaching. And I want lots of windows in my classroom. That's not typically a choice that teachers get to have when they're hired, but preferably I want windows, because in my research of classroom setup, there was a study, and it showed that classrooms with low lighting led to like student depression and less paying attention, and I don't want that. And I think the windows would actually help me as a teacher stay happy as well. Throughout the classroom, I want to have different bulletins. Again, I want the procedures to be listed, obviously, so if the students need help on what they are supposed to do, or if they forget, it's easily accessible and they can easily see what needs to be done. I also want the schedule, again, to be posted so that they know what's coming, what they need to prepare for, and focus themselves on what we're going to be doing. I also want to have a motivational bulletin because those motivational quotes, they help me. I like motivational quotes. I think they're inspirational. And they push me to do my best work and take responsibility for my actions. So having those around the room, I think, will help the students do better work. And that's it. Thank you for watching.